What to do when you don't want to attend your friend's marriage who you've dated for a short time. Weddings are a dumb game where they don't want you to come but have to invite you so they're not rude, and you don't want to go but have to come so you're not rude. You can easily politely decline and not say anything. No need to make a big fuss. She's obviously moved on and feels comfortable enough to invite you. Doesn't mean you have to be in the same place. If you are unable to handle it, you don't go and you deal with any repercussions to your friendships that follow. Your friends probably expect that you can put it behind you and still show up. But they should also understand if you feel weird about it and you don't want to go. Like I said, there could be repercussions. Like the rest of your friends assuming you are still pining away for your friend's wife. The wedding usually has a specific provision for this. When you go, there's a part where they ask if anyone objects. You can stand and say you don't think they should get married because, and you need to use this exact phrase, "We dated for a little while but I never got my dick in her. And I'd like to keep the option open." And quote, if they try to continue the ceremony, you are justified in challenging her fiancé to a duel for behaving dishonorably. Or, recognize that the fiancé is now part of your friend group and you're likely going to have to either get over that one girl you dated for a little while or leave the friend group. Lol. Don't do it. I once attended the wedding of a former situationship and quote, it was too much for me. I spent the whole ceremony with a tight chest, fighting back hot tears. And it wasn't because I still had feelings for him. It was just the realization that he was practically engaged to her during our thing. This girl. She knows she never gave you closure and left you with questions. You're over it now and it's all good. But you don't have to prove that by attending the wedding. You don't owe her that. They feel like they wasted their time investing a post or comment only to get no votes? Yeah, I know what this would feel like. I'm just revisiting an only account to post while I'm high. I sort by new and I found your post. I really get what you mean in my soups, brother. Paragraphs don't get upvotes. I compared myself to a hot dog once and it's my best comment. Sorry. You were saying something. Reddit can be a cruel mistress. Don't be deterred. Yes. And when I realize I'm feeling sad about it, I know it means I've been spending too much time on Reddit. The secret to getting a good number of upvotes is to make insightful, thoughtful comments. Or just bulk. If you throw enough darts at a board, one is bound to be a bullseye. Most the high karma accounts make many comments a day and only a couple get above 10 upvotes. Yeah. Like when we post/comment something we are proud of, it gets basically no traction and we get sad, but the stupid comments we make seem to get a lot of traction. Quite a sad reality on Reddit where it's luck and timing that determines whether our post/comment gains traction or not. How can you differentiate a reasonable boundary in a relationship from one that stems from your insecurity? Differentiate in what regard though? You feel how you feel and that's reason enough, I'd think. If you are not able to maintain the relationship and your well-being without that boundary, you are being reasonable. If the person in the relationship with you can't meet your needs, that's a different issue. Maybe you do need to work on it, or maybe you need a different partner. Depending what your issue is. If my friend told me her partner had it in place for her, would I ask her to blink 3 times fast if she needs help? Depends on the motivation behind the boundary. Is it motivated by a desire to protect my well-being and values? Or does it come from a place of fear or distrust based on past experience or projection? The mark that cannot be ignored in your intuition. Always use common sense. This boundary seems totally acceptable and normal. This boundaries is ringing bells of my childhood. Velp. I'm not a child, so I had better soldier up and do the right thing. Journaling can also help a lot to distinguish between the two. For example, a reasonable boundary could be not tolerating a partner who is not faithful versus insecurity/controlling behavior disguised as boundaries is you can't have opposite sex friends because my ex cheated on me and I'm really anxious now ! And quote. I don't. Boundaries that stem from my insecurities are reasonable boundaries. The biggest misunderstanding in relationship boundaries is what constitutes a boundary. Boundaries are all about you, your needs, and your actions. If you are trying to get your partner to behave/not behave a certain way, that's not a boundary. It's controlling. For example, I once had a long-distance boyfriend try to tell me that it was his boundary that I call once a day, not a boundary. How did it feel like when you first fell in love? I met my husband when I was going through an abusive relationship. He stood up for me along with one of his friends when my ex made a scene at my workplace before I clocked in for work. My husband said he knew he wanted to marry me and loved me the moment he laid eyes on me, but kept it to himself until the time was right, which took 3 years. It took me another 2 months after that into us dating that I knew I loved him and wanted to marry him. One day, I just had that moment and feeling that washed over me where I just knew. Around that same time is when my husband asked both my parents for permission to marry me, and then 2 months later, he proposed. When you know. When I realized I was in love with my so. It wasn't a feeling of euphoria or a crashing wave of emotion. We had been dating for a little bit already and were hanging out in bed one night. I looked over at him and it felt like being next to a warm, comfortable fire on a snow day. I guess I was looking at him a little differently, so he asked me what my look was about and I told him I was falling in love with him. It was a very sweet and casual moment. 5 years later and it still feels like sitting next to a calm fire on a snow day. When I fell in love with my ex, I was really missing him and he sent this sweet song that reminded him of me. I listened to it and just felt this overwhelming rush of a feeling from toes up to my head. I literally remember thinking, holy crap, what am I feeling? Am I okay? This is so intense. And 2 seconds later I realized I was in love with him. Luckily I got to see him a week later, and I doubt that's been the experience of others. But I genuinely felt this encompassing rush of warmth and happiness and just love. It's truly the most fantastic thing I've ever felt. I haven't fallen in love with anyone else, but that was my experience. I do not think it's incredibly common.